Do you ever feel stuck, like you're living your life on autopilot? Are you ready to shift into high gear and reach the success you so richly deserve? Welcome to the Play Big Movement podcast. I am your host, Sharon Lecter, entrepreneur, business strategist, and best-selling author. Playing big is not about settling for good enough or being comfortable. It is about reaching your highest potential and achieving your greatest success. Join me in my Play Big movement as I interview top experts in business, money, and entrepreneurship, all ready to serve you and to help you play big, be number one in your field, live your legacy, and create maximum impact. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast. I'm Sharon Lecter, your host, and I'm really delighted meeting somebody new as you are today. Lydia Knight has a very interesting past and really helps other people find their voice, find their ability to communicate and stand in their own power. As you know, I'm very passionate about that. But welcome, Lydia. Thank you so much for being with me today.
It is a joy to be here. I'm so excited for what we get to create together today. So thank you for everything you do. And yeah, let's get into it for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Lydia, you've got two books coming out this year. And I think, the first one is your memoir, and it talks about your struggle to find your voice. And so tell us a little bit about Little Lydia.
Yes, so little Lydia had a pretty bizarre past. It all turned out to be a beautiful, ending, but I grew up in a cult. So I grew up Mormon, and within Mormonism, my grandmother was actually a cult leader. And so I grew up under a very terrifying circumstance where I believed very scary things about the world, developed my nervous system with a lot of fear and apprehension, believed the world was a very scary place. We were always, running for our lives with the cult story that I'd been told that did not end up being true. But little Lydia was afraid a lot of the time.
Well, and I think so many of us have experienced fear in our lives, but probably not to that severity. But you turn that experience into a way of helping other people understand how to find their power, find their voice, even from the darkest circumstances. So obviously what you went through was triggered your passion to help other people. Share that transformation for yourself.
Yes, thank you for asking, because it's a great example of how some of our very darkest times can turn into some of our greatest lights and our biggest contributions in the world, which is a joy to celebrate. We talk about how the worst part of the story becomes the best part of the story when you're on the other side of it. So for myself, I was in this cult upbringing, and I knew that I could never live a normal life unless I was able to get out of it. Because even when I understood that the idea that I grew up with was a complete lie, and this story and this fear all came from an untrue place, just because we intellectually know something doesn't mean that our body and our nervous system understands that as well. And that oftentimes is driving our behavior more than anything. So what I did really out of survival is I developed a system to work with my own brain. I changed the relationship between me and my brain so that through the power of neuroplasticity and neuroscience, I could be looking at the cult programming that I grew up with a different part of my brain, the prefrontal cortex. It's the part of our brain that can look at something and doubt it, that can tell a new story. And through working through those principles, I was able to become free and live a normal life and go to college and graduate summa cum laude and, have a child and a marriage and, all of these wonderful things that wouldn't have been possible. And I didn't think that that would come up again. I was so grateful for that system. I thought it was just personally for me. But then later in life, when I struggled with some other really, big issues, disordered eating and a lot of scarcity mindset and limiting beliefs around other things, I realized I could use the same principles to transform those pieces and to have freedom from those as well, and that it worked for others too. And we've helped over 9,000 people to do that now. So that's how the bridge happened. A lot of times it starts with our own journey, and then we realize that we've created something that can help other people too.
I often share with people, well, in Outwitting, my book, Outwitting the Devil, we talk about the power of your environment and how many times your environment holds you back and creates that fear. And so if you change your environment, it helps you speed your way to your own self-realization. But I also talk about turning your mess into your message, and then your message into your mission, and your mission becomes somebody else's miracle. And I think you're a prime example of someone who's done that. So you've had the opportunity to share your system with Fortune 50 companies, the Army. Talk a little bit about the impact that you've had on other people.
Yes. So first of all, I just love what you teach, like those principles and how that builds from going from what we talk about, like centering ourselves to centering our sphere to centering our world. That ripple effect is so, so beautiful. And absolutely, our internal world, that internal environment makes a big difference. So the biggest thing that we do is we always go to the root of what is holding us back. So what we've found is working with over 9,000 people and people from all sorts of different organizations and individually, is that we oftentimes with our higher selves, when we get in touch maybe in a meditative moment or when we're feeling our best, we have a vision for our life of what is possible. And then the gap between where we're at and what is possible is our programming. It's our limiting beliefs. It's the things that our parents told us that didn't serve us, or that we got some message from even advertising or movies, stories. We're so impacted as human beings from stories. And so it's simply a matter of changing that programming and that story to, instead of aligning with where we're at right now, aligning with our higher self and our higher vision. So whatever that is in our lives, it's about jumping into that new identity, that up-leveled identity. And we can do that through working with our own brain. So everything that we do goes back to working with deprogramming from what's not serving us and remembering our authenticity and aligning with the higher vision of who we are.
So what you do, it applies to employees and entrepreneurs, business owners, because usually we're our own worst enemy and sometimes it's that subconscious programming. You made the comment, you mentioned scarcity earlier. Obviously, a lot of what I teach is when you raised in a household where people say, pinch your pennies, save for a rainy day, money doesn't grow on trees, we can't afford it. All those things are negative, and it's negative programming about money. So because you hear comments about money negative, money negative, money negative. And so that's the source of creating that scarcity mindset. Until you recognize it and work out of it, that subconscious programming is going to impact you your entire life, right?
Absolutely. And most of us don't realize how much it is running our whole lives until we get to the root and realize that's the reason I've been doing this or sabotaging myself or holding myself back all this time, is because of that one thing that was said by someone that I don't really care about their opinion, but that's been driving my life. And it is it can be frustrating at first to realize that, but then so hopeful and exciting to know that that can change and you can align it with your higher self. So yes and yes.
And I think you're one of your other expertises that, in a very similar format is the yo-yo dieting, the programming in our brain about food and our relationship with food. So speak a little bit to that.
Absolutely. Especially as women, this impacts everyone, but especially as women, we are taught that our physical appearance is very linked to our ability for success. Oftentimes we'll think, oh, well, this person who I want to be, well, that person needs to be X amount of pounds thinner or look 10 years younger or whatever it is that we imagine is a barrier to that. Now, we live in a real world where, yes, we are treated differently depending on our physical appearance, but we're oftentimes much harder on ourselves and create a lot of barriers that don't actually need to be there. So the number one cause of disordered eating, which can be the overeating or something more extreme or the continuing to go back to dieting, the number one cause of disordered eating is restrictive dieting. And being raised, especially as a woman, there is this pressure to always be on a diet, to always think about, will the thing that I'm doing today make me thinner or not? And so we get into the cycle. And a big thing that happens, especially as an executive, a business owner, someone who wants to increase their capacity for helping others in the world and making a bigger impact, is we create this barrier of until, well, I have to fix the things that are within my own life, right? Well, how can I be expected to help other people or live my dreams if I can't even figure out my own eating, or if I can't be consistent with my own exercise, or if I, can't get out of this pattern with chocolate that I'm in? And so it's these layers of barriers that feed off of each other into these cycles that turn into patterns in our brain that are self-reinforcing, where we actually have an urge to diet and an urge to overeat, and they play off of each other. So the biggest impact is getting out of that cycle and realizing all of those invisible barriers that we've created for ourselves.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it's really important. So, Lydia, tell how can they find you?
Yes, so we have everything in one place. We're in, all the social medias and all of that, but we have a really fun link, especially for those of you here that are listening. So if you go to theshecenter.org /podcast, we have a fun page that just has all of the handy links. So we have an amazing community you can join that is totally free. It links to our double memoir Split that's coming out with me being raised in a cult and my story, and the story of my dad who looked for his children for 25 years after they were kidnapped. And then also our upcoming book, Thought Leader, about changing these patterns and deprogramming, and also a link to our upcoming amazing live 3-day retreat where we go deep and turn the healing journey from like decades into days and learn how to deprogram in those tools. So there's lots of fun things there. We switch it up and there'll be fun gifts and wonderful things to access. But the shecenter.org /podcast is a great place to land.
Fantastic. And it's obvious that you have a great passion about what you do. It shows in your face, your energy, your demeanor. So I appreciate the value you've added to my audience. And you're going to hang out with me for a few more minutes because we're going to do another shorter recording for the private Facebook group, Play Big Movement. So I appreciate that. Appreciate your time. And all of you watching and listening, make sure you rewind and re-listen to this. There's probably somebody out there that needs to hear this. So share it with them as well. And in the meantime, again, thank you, Lydia, so much for your time. And for all of you, thank you for being here. You are fabulous. Thank you for being here for this episode of the Play Big Movement podcast. Take care. Love you all.
Thank you for listening to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast. Please subscribe to iTunes and leave us a review, as well as join us in other areas of social media, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn @Sharon Lechter, and for Facebook, author Sharon Lechter. Thank you so much and have a fabulous day.